Welcome to Storytimer at Large. Catherine Winters. Dr. William A. Winters and Emily Etta Whistler Winters should have lived a charmed life, and they did for a while. They lived in Newcastle, Indiana, just after the turn of the century. Dr. William Winters was a dentist in the bustling and growing Indiana town. He had studied dentistry in Chicago. The young couple eventually had two children, Catherine and Frank. In 1908, Emily, Etta to her family and friends, traveled to Poynette, Wisconsin to visit her family in the summer. Her two children got to enjoy their family there and all the fun of summertime. Shortly after returning to Indiana, Emily began feeling ill. She had a lingering cough that wouldn't go away. Sadly, she was diagnosed with tuberculosis. Tuberculosis can be treated now, but in those days it could not. Many people felt that a dry climate would help heal those with tuberculosis. Colorado Springs was recommended as a place that she could go to recover. And so Emily reluctantly left her children in Newcastle and traveled with a friend to Colorado Springs. In April of 1909, Emily's sister, Ida Schaflant, and little Catherine traveled to Colorado Springs to bring Emily home. Emily was not improving. When they arrived, she had tragically already passed away. It was decided to bury Emily in Poynette, Wisconsin, where her family had lived and where she had grown up. Ida and Catherine traveled with Emily's remains. Dr. William Winters and little Frank and other family members joined them there in Poynette, Wisconsin for the funeral. In the 1910 census, the Williams family was living at 918 Broad Street in Newcastle. Their maternal aunt, Ida Schaflant, and grandmother, Eliza Whistler, all are living there with the family to help care for the children after the tragic loss of their mother. Catherine was 6, and Frank was 3. On September 5, 1910, William A. Winters married again. A lady named Bertie O. Ritter had been born in Henry County in 1880. The couple were married in Indianapolis. Bertie O. Ritter was the daughter of Lydia O'Rourke and Joseph Ritter. Her father worked as a carpenter to provide for his family of 5 children, and Bertie was the youngest. So the Winters family in late 1910 now consisted of Dr. William A. Winters, his new wife Bertie, Catherine, and Frank. On March 20th, 1913, 9-year-old Catherine asked permission to go door to door selling packets of needles. She was hoping to win a prize by selling the most. She never returned home, and she was never seen again. Her family went searching for her when she did not return in a timely manner. They went door to door and down each street of the small town calling Catherine's name. They located people who had seen her or bought needles from her. Dan Monroe might have been the last person to see her on Broad Street near the courthouse at about noon. He knew Catherine, and he spoke to her briefly. Some children said they saw her watching a band of gypsies on the edge of town. A mysterious, peculiar man known well about town was mentioned in the paper. Apparently, he was questioned and released. Immediately, Newcastle police and other townspeople were suspicious of the band of gypsies, quote unquote. They suspected one of the wagons might have been used to kidnap Catherine. The wagons were followed and searched. However, there was no sign of Catherine among them. In the coming years, many other people driving wagons would be followed and searched in Indiana and other states, hoping to locate Catherine. Chasing down people in wagons seems like it was a huge waste of resources and time, all for the sake of xenophobia. I feel like Catherine was probably taken by someone local, taken into a house and kept there, and the killer did whatever they wanted to do and probably buried her there or disposed of her in some other way. Her father offered a $2,000 reward, and in the early 1900s, this would have been a really extravagant sum of money. So, if someone had her, they were hoping maybe they would return her for that reward. He also went to the expense of having a short film made to help spread the story of her disappearance. That also is innovative for the time. Movies were in their early stages there in 1913, and in Indiana, films were not. Most towns didn't have a movie theater yet or anything like that. That came along in the 20s, 30s. The Catherine Winters story was covered extensively in the newspapers. Stories ranged from sightings of Catherine to psychics who gave tips as to her whereabouts. People would write to the papers with tips, and sometimes Dr. Winters would travel to speak with the people who had thought that they had seen Catherine. Reports of Catherine in East St. Louis and other towns proved to be false. Her father spent all of his extra time and money searching for Catherine. This was in the age of quote-unquote yellow journalism, so newspapers sold better if the headlines were sensational. Therefore, all sorts of rumors were entertained, and the Winters family went through terrible emotional turmoil with each new article. In 1914, a Newcastle musician would write a ballad about the disappearance. Where did Catherine Winters go? It became a popular tune in Indiana and throughout the Midwest. Even decades later, when William A. Winters died, it was mentioned, this song, in connection with the story of his sister in his obituary. Private citizens donated money to hire a private detective. Burns, a man named Burns, was a detective of some fame. It was hoped that he would solve this mystery. Sadly, neither he nor anyone else has been able to solve this mystery yet. People were so gripped by this mystery and rumors that eventually charges were brought against Dr. and Mrs. Winters and their lodger. The case was thrown out by the judge for lack of evidence. In 1917, a tornado struck Newcastle, and over 300 homes were destroyed. The quote-unquote evidence, some articles of clothing, were blown away with the tornado. No remains of Catherine were ever found, and the articles of clothing were thought to have been fake even before the tornado struck. I don't think anyone in the Winters home harmed Catherine. I think that a sexual predator abducted, raped, and murdered her. It might have been a stranger in town, but more likely it could have been a neighbor or someone well known to the family. Dr. Winters went above and beyond in his search for his daughter. As I said, he had that short film made, for goodness sakes. This family loved their children. Life went on in Newcastle. Dr. Winters registered for the draft in World War I as he was required to, but he was never called to serve. Dr. Winters and Bertie lived out the rest of their lives together there in Newcastle, Indiana. In the 1930 census, they were living at 311 North 16th Street. Bertie worked at a department store as a sales lady. Bertie's aging mother lived with them. Despite her age of 79, she listed her occupation as private laundry. The word servant had been at first entered but then scratched out. The Winters family had a lodger then as well, Mr. George Thompson, who was a police officer and a merchant. We tend to think of dentists as being rather well off financially. They can make a very good living today in an age where most people have dental insurance, but in the earlier parts of the 20th century, dental insurance was not even a concept yet. Most people did not get regular checkups, cleanings, and fillings. Dr. Winters would have been mostly pulling teeth and maybe fitting people for dentures. He might have made a fairly good living out of that, but his wife and mother-in-law were helping out too. And their lodger was paying a bit of rent also, and that helped them get by. Dr. William Winters died in 1940. Birdie Winters, also spelled Bird, B-Y-R-D, passed away in 1953. The two had lived out their lives there in Newcastle, Indiana. Catherine's brother Frank moved to Los Angeles, California when he grew up. In 1924, the song California, Here I Come was a big hit. Al Jolson made the song very famous all over the world. It was an upbeat, popular tune with a decidedly optimistic vibe. If you hummed it or whistled it today, I imagine many people could still identify it. I wonder if the song inspired Frank to head out west like it did so many others. Perhaps he felt the need to leave the town that held so many terrible memories for him. I also wondered what he had become. Had he become a dentist like his father? It seems not. On Ancestry, I found that he had worked in the automotive industry in Los Angeles. A factory is a noisy place, and there's not much time to talk. Frank likely found a lot of solace in his work. He did his best to make it through the Great Depression. Growing up, his family had often taken in a lodger to make ends meet. In his years in California, he was often a lodger in the homes of others. The Great Depression was an incredibly difficult time for nearly everyone in the United States. I wonder if Frank spoke of the tragedies of his childhood to any of his housemates. I wonder if they all shared their own stories. According to the 1930 census, he was a lodger in a private home. He worked in the purchasing department of an automobile plant. In 1935, he lived in Huntington Park, and in 1940 he was a lodger in the home of Grace Evans at 9529 San Antonio, Los Angeles, also known as Southgate City. He was unemployed then in 1940, but he had been an inspector in an automobile manufacturing. In 1955, Frank C. Winters passed away in Los Angeles. He was only 49 years old. He had never married. Perhaps he never met the right person. Or maybe he had learned early in his childhood that loving someone isn't a magic spell. Loving someone isn't enough to protect them from the terrible tragedies that can befall them. Frank C. Winters' remains were cremated. Catherine Winters was never found. She was most likely killed the day she went missing. If I were digging in a basement, excavating a well, or putting in a pool in Newcastle, Indiana, I would keep an eye out for the bones of a small girl. Readers of true crime might be wondering if Mrs. Winters was in Colorado Springs at the time of the infamous axe murders there. No, she wasn't. That terrible tragedy happened in 1911, so they did not. She wasn't there when that happened. It was two homes were attacked by an axe murderer in Colorado Springs in 1911. And I highly recommend the book The Man from the Train by Bill James and Rachel McCarthy James. If you haven't read it yet or listened to it on audiobook, I highly, highly recommend it. It's a very interesting book about crime from that turn of the century era and earlier. Rest in peace, Catherine Winters.